Talk about word is it at all? Men on the Moon?
Hey there, true crime fans. Ever wonder if those chilling horror flicks you watch could inspire real-life madness? Movies have a much stronger impact on audiences than we give them credit for. Sometimes this influence can take a dark turn, and that leads to real-life actions that mirror the fictional events on screen. While films are primarily created to entertain or provoke thought, some have inspired shocking crimes. We're talking about 11 movies that shockingly fueled some truly messed up crimes. I'm sure you've seen most of these movies, but now you're about to look at them with a whole new perspective. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Give me the power, I beg of you!
Child's Play, 1988. A notorious serial killer, Charles Lee Ray, also known as Chucky, is being pursued by Detective Mike Norris through the streets of Chicago. Cornered in a toy store and mortally wounded, Ray uses a voodoo ritual to transfer his soul into a good guy doll, a popular children's toy. As he completes the chant, a bolt of lightning strikes the store, causing an explosion and leaving Ray's lifeless body behind. Meanwhile, Karen Barclay, a widowed mother, is struggling to make ends meet and wants to buy her 6-year-old son, Andy, a good guy doll for his birthday. Unable to afford a new one, she buys a doll from a peddler. Unbeknownst to her, this doll is the very one that now houses the soul of Charles Lee Ray. Andy is thrilled with his new doll, which he names Chucky. However, strange and violent events begin to occur. Andy's babysitter, Maggie, is mysteriously killed, and Andy insists that Chucky is responsible. Chucky reveals his true nature to Andy, telling him about his real identity and his need to transfer his soul into a human body to avoid being trapped in the doll forever. Chucky's ultimate goal is to possess Andy's body, believing that the transfer will be easier with a child. Real-life crime. Jean Powell, Bernadette McNeil, Powell's ex-wife Glenn, and McNeil's boyfriend Anthony Dudson were waiting for Suzanne Capper when she was enticed to her house on December 7, 1992. The reasons for her stealing a coat from McNeely, or McNeely and Dudson getting lice from sleeping in a bed they thought Capper had also used, were inexplicable and trivial, and they led to the kidnapping, torture, and murder. Acts of violence against Suzanne increased during the 5 days following the kidnapping and the duration of her captivity. Additionally, they tortured her with loud rave music through headphones, specifically, "Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play?" with samples from the film Child's Play. McNeely would frequently arrive to torment her, saying, "Chucky's coming to play," at the start of each session. The group finally abandoned Capper for dead after torturing her for days. Capper was able to identify her attackers and provide police with the specifics of her ordeal, even though she died on December 18th from her wounds. When people learned that the murder was carried out by a gang headed by 2 women and that the crimes were motivated by the movie, there was a moral panic.
Can't rely on anyone these days. You gotta do everything yourself. Don't we?
The Dark Knight, 2008. There's no way any of us could ever forget Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker. May he rest in peace. Now, in The Dark Knight, the Joker's reign of terror begins with a series of attacks, including the assassination of key public figures and the bombing of a hospital. He issues an ultimatum to Gotham that Batman must reveal his true identity, or more people will die. Bruce Wayne is torn between his duty to protect Gotham and his desire to maintain his secret identity. The Joker's psychological warfare goes batshit crazy as he targets those closest to Bruce. Pun intended. Real-life crime. One of the saddest incidents in recent American history was the shooting in Aurora, Colorado in 2012. James Holmes carried out a mass shooting at the Century 16 movie theater on July 20th, 2012, during a midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises, leaving 12 people dead and 70 injured. Holmes, a former graduate student studying neuroscience, entered the theater carrying several firearms, including a handgun, a shotgun, and an AR-15 rifle, while wearing tactical gear. He detonated tear gas grenades and then started shooting at the crowd. Holmes fired randomly at the moviegoers for roughly 7 minutes during the attack. According to reports, Holmes called himself the Joker and had dyed his hair orange. A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Teenager Tina Gray experiences a nightmare where she is chased by a grotesque figure with a bladed glove. She wakes up to find her nightgown slashed, mirroring the injuries from her dream. The next day, Tina confides in her friends Nancy Thompson and Glenn Lance, who reveal they have had similar nightmares. That night, while Tina's mother is out of town, Nancy and Glenn stay over to keep her company. Tina's boyfriend, Rod Lane, also joins them. During the night, Tina is brutally murdered in her sleep by an unseen force, with Rod as the only witness. He is arrested for her murder but insists that something supernatural is responsible. Nancy begins to experience her own terrifying dreams involving the same disfigured man, whom she learns is Freddy Krueger. Freddy was a child murderer who was burned alive by the parents of his victims after being released on a technicality. Now, he seeks revenge by killing their children in their dreams. Real-life crime. In September 2004, Daniel Gonzalez, who is commonly known as the Freddy Krueger Killer, went on a murderous rampage through London and Sussex, UK. Gonzalez, who had a history of substance abuse and mental health problems, was greatly impacted by horror movies, especially Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street. In 2006, he was found guilty of murder and given 6 life sentences. Gonzalez committed suicide in 2007 while he was a prisoner at the high-security mental health facility Broadmoor Hospital.
License and power to confront this cruel demon.
The Exorcist, 1973. The Exorcist, 1973, begins with Father Lancaster Mirren, an elderly Catholic priest, on an archaeological dig in Iraq. He discovers a small statue of Pazuzu, a demonic figure, which gives him a dreadful feeling. In Georgetown, Washington, D.C., actress Chris McNeil is living with her 12-year-old daughter, Reagan, while filming a movie. Strange things begin to happen in their home, like unexpected noises, furniture moving on its own, and Regan's increasingly weird behavior. Initially, Chris links these changes to psychological issues and seeks medical help, but the doctors are baffled and unable to provide any answers. Chris turns to Father Damien Karras, a priest and psychiatrist who is struggling with his faith following the death of his mother. Karras is initially skeptical, but becomes convinced of the supernatural nature of Reagan's condition after witnessing her demonic manifestations. Karras seeks permission from the church to perform an exorcism, and Father Mirren is called in to lead the ritual. Real-life crime. Ossett, West Yorkshire resident Michael Taylor started acting strangely in 1974, which his wife Christine blamed on demonic possession. He would exhibit signs of extreme emotional distress and violent outbursts. Father Peter Vincent and Reverend Raymond Smith, 2 ministers, performed an exorcism on him. Taylor went home after the exorcism and viciously assaulted and murdered his wife, Christine. Then, covered in blood, he wandered the streets until a policeman discovered him. After being taken into custody, Taylor maintained that he was under the influence of demons at the time and denied having any recollection of the assault.
First rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
Fight Club, 1999. The first rule of Fight Club is that you don't talk about Fight Club, but I will talk about it because it's my job. Edward Norton plays a disillusioned office worker suffering from chronic insomnia. To cope with his sleeplessness and emotional numbness, he attends various support groups. The narrator's life changes dramatically when he meets Tyler Durden, portrayed by Brad Pitt, on a business flight. Tyler is a soap salesman who brings out the narrator's suppressed desires and frustrations. After the narrator's apartment is mysteriously destroyed in an explosion, he moves in with Tyler in a house on the outskirts of the city. Tyler introduces Project Mayhem, a campaign of anti-corporate vandalism and anarchistic acts designed to disrupt society and challenge the status quo. Real-life crime. Kyle Shaw, a 17-year-old from New York City, tried to bomb an Upper East Side Starbucks in 2009. According to reports, Shaw was influenced by the movie Fight Club, specifically the anarchist and anti-establishment themes represented by the made-up band Project Mayhem. Shaw made a foolish attempt to imitate these themes with his actions. He placed a homemade bomb outside the Starbucks on May 25, 2009. Thankfully, there were no injuries and only minor damage from the device. But the incident raised serious concerns and prompted an FBI and New York Police Department investigation. Authorities found that Shaw had been heavily influenced by Fight Club during the course of the investigation. He even launched his own version of Project Mayhem, enlisting friends and organizing several violent and vandalistic activities.
Sydney.
Billy, watch out!
Scream, 1996. Scream is set in the fictional town of Woodsboro, California, and begins with high school student Casey Becker receiving a chilling phone call from an unknown person. The caller quizzes her about horror movies, and when she answers incorrectly, her boyfriend Steve is brutally murdered. Casey tries to escape but is ultimately killed by the masked assailant known as Ghostface. The focus shifts to Sydney Prescott, a high school student dealing with the upcoming anniversary of her mother's murder. Sydney's life is complicated by her strained relationship with her boyfriend, Billy Loomis, and her friendship with Tatum Riley. Sydney receives a threatening phone call from Ghostface and is attacked but manages to escape. The body count rises, the high school is closed, and the students attend a party at Stu Macher's house. In a shocking twist, it is revealed that Billy and Stu are the killers. They confess to murdering Sydney's mother and plan to frame Sydney's father, Neil Prescott, for the murders, having kidnapped him earlier. So that went pretty nuts, pretty quick. Real-life crime. Mario Padilla, then 16 years old, and his cousin Samuel Ramirez, then 14 years old, were taken into custody in 1998 after they ruthlessly killed Mario's mother, Gina Castillo, in Linwood, California. The Scream movie franchise, which follows a masked murderer named Ghostface as he commits a string of killings, had a big impact on the teens. They decided to imitate the murderers portrayed in the films, and they did just that on January 13, 1998. They attacked Gina Castillo, stabbing her several times with kitchen knives. Because of the boy's age and the impact of the Scream films, the case attracted a lot of media attention. Saw franchise. The Saw franchise, created by James Wan and Lee Wanell, is a series of horror films centered around the character John Kramer, also known as the Jigsaw Killer. He traps victims in elaborate death traps and forces them to play deadly games to survive. Each Saw movie follows a new set of victims who finds themselves caught in Jigsaw's deadly games. The traps are often gruesome and physically demanding, requiring the victims to make difficult choices and sometimes sacrifice their own lives or the lives of others. The franchise has been praised for its suspenseful storytelling, complex characters, and shocking twists. However, it has also been criticized for its graphic violence and disturbing content. Real-life crime. Two teenagers from Utah came up with a plan to murder a school resource officer and two middle school pupils by torturing them. After learning of the scheme, one of the teens' parents contacted the police. The teenagers told Murray police that they were serious when they were interviewed, that they intended to harm people, and that they would meet the following day to create a hit list that was even more specific. 3 counts of conspiracy to commit aggravated kidnapping have now been brought against each of them. The two developed a hit list of 3 individuals they intended to abduct, torture, and murder as a result of watching the violent Saw film series. When the mother of the 15-year-old overheard a phone call, police became aware of the case. While she listened, they talked about the strategy and how they would lure these victims to locations they had picked out. Friday the 13th, 1980. In 1958 at Camp Crystal Lake, 2 camp counselors sneak away to a cabin to have sex, only to be murdered by an unseen man. This incident, along with the drowning of a young boy named Jason Voorhees a year earlier, leads to the camp being closed. Fast forward to the present day, 1980, and the camp is being reopened by Steve Christie, who hires a group of teenage counselors to help refurbish the facilities. Among them are Alice, Bill, Marcy, Jack, Brenda, and Ned. At night, the counselors begin to be picked off one by the mysterious killer. Ned is the first to go, followed by Jack, who is killed with an arrow through the throat while lying in bed. Marcy meets her end in the bathroom, where she is struck with an axe. Brenda is lured out to the archery range and killed, and Bill is found pinned to a door with arrows. And I hope you already know that this mysterious killer is Jason Voorhees. Real-life crime. Branch. A 19-year-old from Greenfield, Massachusetts, viciously killed Sharon Gregory, an 18-year-old Greenfield Community College student, on October 24, 1988. Branch was deeply enamored with crime films, especially the Friday the 13th film series. He was known to rent and watch these movies often, and his apartment was crammed with relics, such as slasher movies, murder mystery books, and even hockey masks that looked like Jason Voorhees. For Branch, this obsession was difficult to distinguish between reality and fiction. Natural-born killers, 1994. Mickey and Mallory Knox embark on a killing spree across America, leaving a trail of bodies and chaos in their wake. The movie starts with Mickey and Mallory stopping at a diner in the New Mexico desert. When two rednecks harass Mallory, she and Mickey respond with lethal force, killing everyone in the diner except one customer, whom they leave alive to tell their story. This act sets the tone for their crimes as they continue to murder indiscriminately, always leaving one survivor to spread their legend. Real-life crime. Inspired by the movie Natural-Born Killers, 18-year-old Sarah Edmondson and her boyfriend, Benjamin Darras, went on a violent crime spree in March 1995. After spending the night at Edmondson's family cabin in Muskogee, Oklahoma, watching Natural-Born Killers, the two started their little killing tour. Armed with a .38 caliber handgun, they departed the cabin and made their way to Memphis, Tennessee for a Grateful Dead show. In addition to being given a life sentence, Darras was also given a 35-year sentence for his role in the Byers shooting. Edmondson entered a guilty plea to charges of using a firearm during a violent felony, attempted second-degree murder, and armed robbery. William Savage's friend and best-selling author John Grisham publicly attacked Oliver Stone and the motion picture business, claiming that directors ought to be held responsible for the possible effects of their work. In addition, Patsy Byers sued Time Warner, Edmondson, Darras, and Oliver Stone, alleging that the movie incited the violence. The Purge, 2013. The Purge, 2013 is a dystopian horror film set in a near-future America where the government has sanctioned an annual event known as the Purge. During these 12 hours, all crime, including murder, is legal, and emergency services are suspended. The Purge is intended to reduce crime and unemployment rates for the rest of the year. What a grim way to deal with things, huh? I hope we never get to see something like this get approved. Real-life crime. Jonathan Cruz, a 19-year-old Indianapolis resident, claimed that the movie The Purge was the inspiration for his 4-day killing rampage in May of 2016. On May 12, 2016, Cruz killed 54-year-old Billy Boyd on North College Avenue. He killed 40-year-old Jay Higginbotham on North Denny Street later that day. On May 15, 2016, Cruz killed Jose Ruiz, a 25-year-old man who was his last victim. Cruz allegedly made a clear reference to the movie when he told friends and family that he was purging. Shortly after the outburst, Cruz was taken into custody. Prosecutors pointed to his obsession with the Purge as a major contributing factor to his crimes during his trial. Cruz faced numerous charges of robbery, murder, and other offenses. He received 3 consecutive life sentences without the chance of parole in 2017.
They laughed at me, blood in me moans. This murderous law.
A Clockwork Orange, 1971. This masterpiece is directed by Stanley Kubrick and based on Anthony Burgess's novel. A Clockwork Orange is set in a near-future Britain where Alex DeLarge commits acts of ultraviolence with his gang of droogs, Pete, Georgie, and Dim. Alex's violent escapades continue until his droogs set him up during a robbery. Alex is caught by the police and sentenced to 14 years in prison for murder. While incarcerated, Alex learns about the experimental rehabilitation program called the Ludovico technique, which promises to cure him of his violent tendencies in exchange for a reduced sentence. Desperate to regain his freedom, Alex volunteers for the treatment. The Ludovico technique involves administering drugs that induce severe nausea while forcing Alex to watch films depicting violent acts. This conditioning makes him physically ill at the mere thought of violence. Upon completion of the treatment, Alex is declared cured and released back into society. However, Alex's return to the outside world is far from smooth, but I won't spoil it for you. Go watch it. Real-life crime. Peter Foster, also known as the Clockwork Orange Killer, committed a string of violent crimes over several decades as a result of his obsession with the movie A Clockwork Orange. Foster was so obsessed with the movie's main character, Alex DeLarge, that he frequently dressed up as the main character, complete with makeup and a bowler hat, to mimic his appearance. In July 1989, Foster killed his partner, Linda Grimm, in what is believed to be his first murder. He used an electric guitar as a weapon and viciously beat her until she died. The second murder occurred in December 2002 when he fatally struck Linda Wardhill, another partner, in the stomach. The violent acts shown in A Clockwork Orange, especially the scene where Alex DeLarge attacks a woman, were replicated in both murders. For numerous assaults, false imprisonment, and kidnapping offenses spanning at least since 1973, he was sentenced to an additional 22 years in prison. He is a very dangerous person because of his violent behavior and 26 years of criminal activity. In 2003, Foster was ultimately caught and prosecuted. In the Linda Grimm case, it was discovered during his trial that he had a lengthy history of violent behavior and had escaped capture for many years because of false post-mortem evidence. He was given 2 life sentences for the murders and an additional 22-year sentence for his other offenses after the jury found him guilty of all charges. Marvelous verdict. It's kind of creepy how these stories can get into people's heads, but let's be real. These folks were already messed up. These movies just gave them some weird ideas. While it's important to remember that most people can distinguish between fantasy and reality, there are undoubtedly individuals who are more susceptible to the influence of the media. After all, as the saying goes, art imitates life and life imitates art. Anyway, stay safe out there and don't let the movies get to your head too much. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.